The Moondrop Aria is one of my favorite IEMs, and the video I made about that headphone about a year ago has gotten over 200,000 views and a ton of positive feedback, which means that not only do I like it, but a lot of you do as well. So today we're going to be covering an iteration of the Aria, which is going to be the Moondrop Aria Snow. Now I'm going to be reviewing this headphone sort of as its own individual thing, but I'm also going to be harkening back and comparing a lot compared to the regular Aria in this video. Now, despite the fact that these are both exactly the same price at $80, this isn't just a color change of the chassis. There's actually quite a bit that's gone into the differences between the two. Let's go ahead and jump into what those differences are. Now, the visual changes are obvious with the snowflake theme on the outside of the chassis, of course, and the lighter colored not only cable, which is a different material choice for the cable, going from a braided cable on the regular Aria to this more rubberized clear cable on the new Snow. There are a lot of similarities between these two, including the general shape is exactly the same, and as far as I can tell, the chassis material is identical as well. So your fitment should be good for both if you tried either. Internally though, the original Aria had a liquid crystal polymer diaphragm, and the Snow has changed to a DLC diaphragm, which is a diamond-like carbon diaphragm. This sounds like a marketing gimmick, like diamond-like sounds a little cheesy, but it's actually a real thing. It is a diamond-like carbon. Now, one of the bigger changes here though is the tuning differences between the two. The VDSF target is for the Snow, that is more of Moondrop's typical tuning, and the Aria is a little bit more leaning towards the Harman curve for tuning. And that is going to be some of the bigger changes that we're going to talk more about in the sound section. As far as build for $80, these are both pretty good. They're not the top of the pack, but they're also not far behind from that top either. Now, for sound quality, I wanted to give these things an equal shot at sounding their best. So I actually put them on a completely overkill amplifier, which is going to be the new Topping A90D, which I will have a review out soon. That is an upcoming review. So subscribe for that if you haven't. I should say though that the differences between these two headphones is not substantial in terms of sound quality, and neither of them I don't think really need a dedicated amplifier. I would definitely say that a dedicated amp is completely optional, and these can both sound awesome off of a phone or a laptop, a modern one at least. The Snow is a pretty detailed headphone for the cost. It doesn't have a ton of upper air extension that you might see with some other headphones, like a Dioko, for example, has a lot more treble extension above 10K, and it sounds a lot more detailed in that area because of it. But throughout most of the frequencies, it does come across fairly detailed, though detail retrieval does not necessarily seem to be the absolute focus of either the Aria or the Snow. The OG Aria though actually does have a little bit more treble extension above 10,000 hertz. You can definitely capture a little bit more room information from that headphone, a little bit more background information, and that actually helps sell the illusion of soundstage a little bit better on the OG Aria, though some of the tuning differences in some other regions make for a slightly better separation between mid-range performance and treble performance because of how the mid-range happens on the Snow. And so for soundstaging differences due to the treble response, if you look at the larger picture of all the frequencies combined, they both kind of trade blows for different reasons and have different benefits to the sound staging. Initially, I was actually expecting the Snow to sound a little bit cleaner up here, and it does seem maybe a little bit faster sounding, but in terms of frequency forwardness, I do feel like at least my versions of each, the Aria, the OG one, is a little bit more forward in that upper extension area for treble response. Now, I think a lot of people are going to focus on the bass differences because they are notable, but I actually think that one of the most slept on benefits of the Snow here is the mid-range. The mid-range has been, in my opinion, improved over the standard Aria. The Snow has a slight boost to the upper mid-range right before the S&T range that the traditional Aria did not have. Now, there is a perfect track which can isolate this difference exactly, and I want to talk about that for a sec here. The song is I Drink Wine from Adele. So, in the song, the S's and T's are a little bit harsh. They're not sibilant, they're just a little bit sharp in some areas. Now, the classic Aria has most of the body of her vocals, but then it kind of dips down in the upper mids up until the S&T range, and then it kind of shoots back up and it comes across fairly harsh. Now, the difference between the S and the T's between the two headphones is not that substantial, but what is substantial is the upper mid-range leading up to that S&T range. The Snow has a little bit more boost there, which actually makes her voice sound actually way more fulfilled and way more accurate to some higher end headphones that I was comparing against, just as sort of like an ABC comparison between these two. I felt like in the mid-range, the Snow felt much more fulfilled in that upper mid area, and it made that song specifically actually sound really, really, really good. And it made that S&T range a lot more tolerable because of it. So she didn't come across quite as sharp. So that was wonderful. Now, in general, this is more applicable than just to that specific song from that specific artist. This will apply to almost every female vocalist that I've heard on these two headphones. I think the Snow is a lot more fulfilled and a lot more accurate sounding to what an actual voice sounds like. Just in that slight difference in frequency tuning actually. And this isn't a substantial frequency difference between the two, but it is enough to make, I think, the end experience a lot more fulfilled sounding and correct sounding on the Snow here. The Snow came out a while ago, and I've seen a number of reviews since, and not a lot of them are talking about this, but I actually really like this addition to the Snow's tuning. Okay, so bass response. This is what everybody's going to be asking about. This is going to be the biggest kind of sticking point for most people, and this is going to be where your decision is going to have to be made on which one you would prefer if you are looking to buy either of these. The OG Aria has more bass. Now, there's some pros and some cons to this. It is bassier in both the mid-bass region and the sub-bass region, so it does hit harder for both of those. It feels more filled out. In my opinion, it's a little bit more fun because of it. The original Aria, though, does have a slight problem for a little bit of a mid-bass bloat. But here's where I think Moondrop missed a big opportunity for tuning adjustments. If they had cleaned up that mid-range but kept the sub-bass quantity that the original Aria has, this would have been a total 10 out of 10 highly recommended version of the Aria, from me at least. I would have loved that. That would have been perfect. Now for $80, the mid-bass bloat on the standard Aria is totally worth the compromise due to all the other benefits of the sound. And, slightly bloated mid-bass, I think a lot of people actually like that sound signature, so it's really not a problem. It's only audiophiles who are going to complain about something like that. The mid-bass bloat is cleaned up and actually pretty much gone on the Snow, but they didn't have a resurgence in sub-bass quantity, and it's a little bit lower than the standard Aria is. Now, the effect that this has is that the bass just comes across a little bit flatter than it would on the standard Aria. But honestly, I think that most people are going to prefer the bass response of the Aria, even though it's not technically perfect. The Snow just doesn't have enough to really feel fulfilled in this comparison, though it is really notable that tips make a huge difference for bass, as we all know. So I put Final Audio Type E tips on the Snow to enhance a little bit more of the high end and enhance a little bit more of that bass response. And it sounds pretty wonderful like that. That is also something that I might suggest for the standard Aria as well. Now, sound staging. I'm actually not hearing a massive sound staging difference between the two. Both the imaging and sound staging is great for both models. I don't think one is vastly superior than the other. So my conclusion, in large part, I was only talking about the differences in the areas that are different, but I didn't talk about all the areas that are the same, which is the majority of the sound signature actually. These are surprisingly similar given the differences in not only tuning preference and tuning style, but actual material choice for some of the driver options that they changed. So I'd lay it out like this. If you like a fuller, more clean sounding vocalist that sounds a little bit more correct and you're less focused on bass and upper treble response, I would stick with the Snow. If you prefer bass and is still detailed but slightly smoother treble response in terms of detail retrieval and a little bit less forward in the upper mids, then I would stick with the OG Aria as the one to get. Now, like I said, bass is going to probably be the deciding factor for most people on which one they prefer. Personally, I would stick with the OG Aria, but the Snow is definitely an alternate tuning, and I really, really enjoy the boost to the upper mids that the Snow has. So that's going to be it for this review and comparison. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time. Bye.